All right, let's jump right in. Today, in this explainer, we're pulling back the curtain on the hidden structural forces that are completely reshaping the daily lives of millions of people in modern India. You know, we so often look at our personal struggles, whether that's stress at work, anxiety in our relationships, or crazy academic pressure, as just that, individual issues. But what if we zoom out for a second? What if your personal burnout isn't a you problem, but actually a symptom of a massive systemic shift? Let's take a look at the data. 46.7. According to the International Labor Organization, Indian employees are clocking an exhausting average of 46.7 hours per week. That literally makes India one of the most overworked nations on the planet. And if you look at sectors like IT, professionals are routinely stretching well beyond 50 hours, with burnout rates hitting a staggering 62%. It's wild.
Then, look at this number, 200,000. That is the sheer number of adolescents packing up and migrating to the city of Kota every single year. They're feeding this absolute behemoth of a $720 million coaching industry, all gearing up for hyper-competitive exams, where the acceptance rate is notoriously capped at under 2%. 2%!
And finally, we've got 82.4 million. That's the estimated number of Indians navigating dating apps right at this moment. But it's not all romance. Users are experiencing severe decision fatigue, relational burnout, and appearance anxiety. They're basically locked in this endless digital cycle of gamified interactions and ghosting.
So, here is the absolutely crucial question we have to ask ourselves. What on earth do these numbers have in common? What actually connects intense student pressure in Kota, rampant corporate burnout in our metro hubs, and digital dating exhaustion? Well, that brings us to Section 1, Symptoms of a New India.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 2, the 1990s Neoliberal Shift. Because to really understand this, we have to recognize that these aren't just isolated personal failings. They are deeply interconnected symptoms. So why now? Why are we seeing this incredibly specific type of pressure today and not, say, 30 years ago? Well, we have to trace this all the way back to the 1990s economic liberalization. This was a period that introduced neoliberal policies that fundamentally altered how human worth is constructed and measured in India.
Think about it like this. Historically, India operated on a collectivist matrix, a we self. Your identity, your worth, it was tied to intrinsic belonging within your kinship and your community. Basically, you had a right to exist irrespective of your economic output. But today, we've violently shifted to this hyper-individualistic neoliberal matrix. Now a person's value is strictly tied to what we call transactional utility. That means your economic output, your hustle, and your algorithmic validation on screens.
Under neoliberalism, we're essentially expected to act as continuous, never-ending individual projects. Let's walk through how this actually builds. Step 1 starts with policy, which shifts all the responsibility squarely onto you, the individual. Then, Step 2. You're expected to turn yourself into a brand, whether you're optimizing a LinkedIn page or curating a dating profile. Step 3 demands continuous optimization of that brand. You always have to be upgrading. And the inevitable result in Step 4, a psychology of permanent anxiety and artificial dissatisfaction. You're left feeling like you are literally never quite good enough for the market. So how does this play out in everyday life? Let's look at Section 3, the game of human capital. These intense psychological pressures don't just happen. They're maintained and amplified through modern competition. Game theory actually gives us a great lens for this. Take education. To beat that brutal 2% acceptance rate, students enroll in dummy schools, literally just to skip regular class and focus entirely on exam coaching. It's a classic prisoner's dilemma. Rational individual choices are creating a massive collective tragedy. In romance, dating apps have turned the search for connection into ruthless matching markets. And in labor, the gig economy forces non-stop competitive signaling. The system is, by design, pitting us against each other in this never-ending hunger game. And guys, the cost of playing this game is incredibly high. Corporate hustle culture demands such extreme overwork that 3/4 of IT employees report regularly missing critical family milestones just to survive the game. I mean, think about that. Overwork has been glorified as this ultimate badge of honor, but behind the scenes, it is actively fracturing our traditional social support systems.
This brings us to Section 4, the algorithmic transactional self.
New technologies have completely hijacked this transactional mindset, and this is especially true for the millions of people entering the gig economy. The causal chain here is super clear. It begins with algorithmic management, literally being bossed around by an app. This leads directly to Step 2, constant surveillance. This kind of structural control creates a deep psychological loss of autonomy. Ultimately, it results in profound feelings of systemic unwantedness. mostly because the worker knows without a doubt that the algorithm views them as entirely replaceable.
You can imagine the massive cognitive dissonance this creates. A lot of Indian gig workers try to maintain their dignity by drawing on traditional cultural concepts like karma yoga, the beautiful idea of duty or work as worship, but this collides violently with an algorithmic reality that treats them as highly disposable data points. The state might push a narrative of self-reliant entrepreneurship, Atman or Bharta, but the platform's code ensures the worker is constantly dominated and tracked.
Which takes us to our next major shift in Section 5. Walled gardens, isolated minds.
What's truly fascinating is how these psychological and economic changes are literally reshaping the physical geography of Indian cities. If you look pre-1990s, urban life was largely defined by democratic shared spaces, open maidans, and local neighborhoods. Then, with liberalization in the 90s, private developers gained immense power. Fast forward to the post-2000s, and we see this aggressive rise of biometric gated communities. We went from open spaces that forced diverse social encounters to exclusionary, vertical communities, heavily designed to keep the outside world away.
Because of this, we've largely lost the traditional Hada culture, those intellectually stimulating, class-transcending public street conversations that created both friction and fraternity. In its place, we have what researchers are calling urban zombification. Today, in our heavily surveilled, gated communities, peace simply means social withdrawal, segregation, and, unfortunately, a deep, underlying suspicion of the very working class who maintain these spaces.
So, how do we move forward? Let's get into Section 6, fixing systems, not symptoms.
So, where does all of this leave us? Well, we arrive at the final sleight of hand, how we are continuously tricked into treating these massive structural failures as individual mental health flaws. As outlined in this paper by Ulash Bashar-Gezgin, mainstream psychology often acts as a guardian of the status quo. When the economy makes us precarious and anxious, neoliberal psychology aggressively misdirects us, basically claiming the problem is solely within our own minds.
This concept right here is called psychologization. Neoliberalism tells you to simply meditate, optimize your personal brand, or just adapt to the stress. It tells us to fix ourselves, rather than challenging the gig platform's algorithm, the 10-hour corporate workday, or the academic sorting machine that intentionally fails 98% of its participants. It's wild when you think about it.
Real solutions absolutely require moving away from purely individual therapies. We have to fix the societal structures generating the distress in the first place. That means we need to reform algorithmic platform governance to actually protect gig workers. It means addressing this hyper-competitive credentialism in our education system. It means reclaiming our physical urban commons to end this widespread isolation, and it definitely means enforcing humane working hour regulations to finally stop the glorification of burnout.
I want to leave you with a provocative thought today. If our modern anxieties, from the classroom to the boardroom to the dating app, are predictably designed by the pressures of a neoliberal system, are you actually failing, or is the system functioning exactly as intended? It's time we reevaluate our personal burnout as the structural issue it truly is. Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the systems around you.